It's time for Security Now. Steve Gibson is here. More on the Sony hack. Plus, we'll answer questions from you, our audience. Stay tuned. The last Security Now before Christmas is coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. Hi, this is Leo Laporte, and if you'd like to help us design our new website, I invite you to visit twit.to/navtest. We've got 8 quick questions we'd like to ask you that will help us make the navigation easier to use. That's twit.to/navtest. Thanks a lot. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 486, recorded December 16th, 2014. Your questions, Steve's answers, number 203. Security Now is brought to you by Braintree. If you're a developer or manager of a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out Braintree. Braintree's new V.0 SDK makes it easy to support multiple mobile payment types with one simple integration. To learn more and to try out their sandbox, go to BraintreePayments.com/twit. And by IT Pro TV. A good IT Pro is always learning, and IT Pro TV is the resource to keep your skills and knowledge up to date. IT Pro TV offers engaging courses streamed to your Roku, computer, or mobile device. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/securitynow and use the code SN30. And by Harry's. For guys who want a great shave experience for a fraction of what you're paying now, go to harrys.com. Get $5 off your first purchase by entering the code SecurityNow when you check out. Time for Security Now, the show that protects you and your loved ones online with the explainer-in-chief himself, Stephen Gibson of the Gibson Research Corporation. Well, I should say happy holidays, Stephen.
Thank you, Leo. I guess we are at this point. We're out on the 16th of December, so we're halfway into or through December. And yeah, we all have the spirit and lights, and we're whistling.
I was drinking eggnog this morning.
Before I forget, I think I have mentioned to you before, but I have been in a live theater where Patrick Stewart was doing his one-man show of A Christmas Carol.
Because you heard Andy Ihnatko talking about that on MacBreak Weekly earlier today. That's his pick. He loves the Audible book of that.
Well, and I didn't know there was an Audible book of it. Yeah. So I wanted to tell our listeners, I waited until the camera was rolling or you were recording this or whatever it is you do.
What is it I do? I don't know.
Push buttons
yes.
and magic happens. To tell our listeners that if you're fans of Patrick Stewart, you know, from, of course, Star Trek Next Generation, it really is. I mean, Andy is absolutely right. You know, Andy told the story during MacBreak Weekly that annually he gets his he did say cassettes, so he can't still have a cassette player. But
with Andy, it's possible.
Or maybe he's been doing it since the era of cassettes when it was first made available on Audible. Anyway, so Patrick Stewart, A Christmas Carol, on Audible. And wow, I mean, it was, you know, just him sitting on a stool and occasionally walking around a little bit. It was fabulous. And I'm probably going to get it myself, which means I'll finally have to get an Audible account.
Wow.
Yeah, because it'd be fun to have that. It was spectacular. So just a heads up for our listeners who like Patrick. We had a relatively slow week. Got some news, of course. There are new upcoming changes in Chrome being bandied about. We want to talk about with Google continuing to push security. News of a previously unknown devastating cyber attack surfaced that had been kept quiet for 10 months, but was massive. And then I want to talk a little bit, because there's been a lot of discussion. I mean, one of the things that happened, of course, our show last week, we talked about, it was titled Expensive Lessons. And one of the things I did was enumerate the nature of the documents that were leaked or stolen by the hackers of Sony Entertainment. Well, since then, of course, we're starting to see all the salacious details of the content of the email. And so there's been a lot of interesting discussion. I know that you had a great coverage of that whole issue on Twit on Sunday. And so I want to talk a little bit about the ethics of disclosing illegally obtained content, and then Sony's new questionable strategy with the press about that. Verizon has what I would consider a ridiculous cipher phone app that they have just announced.
I knew you'd laugh when you read about that.
Oh, my Lord. And we've got some miscellaneous fun stuff and, of course, questions from our listeners to put us on to other topics that we will be talking about. So, great show.
I'm glad you're going to, this is all good stuff. We'll talk about this. Before we get into the news of the week, I want to talk a little bit about our sponsor, Braintree Payments. Braintree is really a cool solution. Now, this is really directed at people who are developers, or maybe you're managing a mobile app, and you want to have a payment API in your app. So this is a very specialized product. Braintree has an SDK called V.0 that makes it really easy to support multiple mobile payment types, including Apple Pay. Of course, you do want to support that, obviously, but also PayPal, even things like Bitcoin, Venmo, and all major debit and credit cards with one simple and fast integration. It really couldn't be more easy to do. With the Braintree V.0 SDK, and by the way, there's a simple, small snippet of code and you're all set up. Like, take less than 10 minutes. You really, literally can integrate this in your mobile app so simply. And you're going to love it. It supports Android, of course, iOS, of course, JavaScript clients too. There are SDKs in 7 different programming languages: .NET, Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, and Ruby. The code is beautiful. In fact, they even have a sandbox on the site at braintreepayments.com/twit, where you can see what it would look like. You can actually kind of implement it yourself, or they'll help you do it. They got great customer service with a live person you can always talk to. Braintree, by the way, is the most secure way to pay. They're known for their back-end security. We know that that's important. If you're listening to security now, their merchant protection. You never have to worry about fraud because Braintree has you covered. It's tokenized. You know, it's what we were talking about, of course. What was that? The EMV system.
Right.
Yeah, that's completely tokenized.
Europay, MasterCard, and Visa.
Yeah. But they support that and a lot more. And it's no surprise that if you look at it, they are being used by Uber, by Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, Living Social. They set it up originally for GitHub. GitHub has gone from 0 to 60 with this. Yeah, I know you probably even, if you're a developer, you certainly know GitHub. You may even use it. So if you're looking for the right payments platform, I want you to check out Braintree V.0. It's an incredible SDK at braintreepayments.com/twit. Review the documentation. It's very easy. Play in the sandbox. You can give them a try with no commitment. Test your integration before you go to production. And once you integrate Braintree, the first $50,000 in transactions are fee-free. I think this is the best offer we've ever had. BraintreePayments.com/twit. Go to BraintreePayments.com/twit. This is the easiest way to get Apple Pay and everything else into your app. All right, Steve, the news of the week.
So some dialogue surfaced over in the Chromium Chrome developer team area, suggesting that they want to push further with the sort of the overall thrust that Google has been making to secure the internet. They're planning. I know you're sitting down on your ball, so it's safe to tell you this, Leo.
Uh-oh.
They're planning to explicitly mark non-HTTPS connections as non-secure in some new fashion in the user's experience.
This weren't they doing this before? I mean, this isn't new, is it?
Yeah, no.
Oh.
So the idea was what we've had so far has been an indication if you are using HTTPS That is, like the key is not broken or the lock is closed, sort of a subtle clue. Then we went with the extended validation certificates. We, added the green glow if you were using an EV cert. But if you were not secure, it was just kind of normal. What they're intending to do is, like a skull and crossbones if you're not using TLS. So that they're going to further, they're basically going to start warning people when you're not using a secure connection.
Well, but it isn't a lie. It is less secure. I hope it's not a skull and crossbones, though. This site is poison. If it's kind of a non-loaded thing, isn't that what the open padlock was?
Yeah. But clearly their intention, though, their intent. Well, okay. What they said was, we, the Chrome security team, propose that user agents gradually, that means browsers, gradually change their UX, the user experience, to display non-secure origins as affirmatively non-secure. We intend to devise and begin deploying a transition plan for Chrome in 2015. The goal of this proposal is to more clearly display to users that HTTP provides no data security. We'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on this proposal and to discuss with the web community about how different transition plans might serve users. Then they finish saying, we all need data communication on the web to be secure, private, authenticated, untampered. When there's no data security, the UA should explicitly display that so users can make informed decisions about how to interact with an origin. So they're clearly saying that they intend to display a signal of some sort that causes users to be anxious or aware in a way that they're not currently when they're not on a secure connection or secured connection. I noticed they were careful to say non-secure rather than insecure because the two are not synonymous.
It's not encrypted. I think the proof will be in the implementation. This could be completely innocuous, or if they put a big banner up that said "Don't go here," well, that wouldn't be so good.
Or that would be a bit of a problem.
They don't tell us how they're going to do this, what it's going to look like.
No, and this at this point, this is just sort of this is something we think we should do. Now, I don't participate over there. I'm sure that some of our listeners do, and they're inviting comments. What I would like to see, and I would love it if someone would get this into the discussion, is something we talked about recently, and that is, while we're going to be creating additional distinctions, I think it's important to distinguish a domain validation certificate, a DV certificate, from anything higher class, like an OV, the organization validation cert. Remember that the DV with the EFF's effort, which is going to be hitting around the same time frame, like second quarter of 2015, where that all becomes free and automated. At the same time, it's important to understand that the assertion being made is not that you're at the company whose site you are, but only that the domain name validates against the certificate. And that's a subtle but important distinction. So, if there's some way to, without confusing people, to say, we do have EV certs special. It would be nice to have organization validation somehow showing stronger than domain, than the free automated certs that we're going to start having around the middle of 2015. And then, of course, they're going to want to do something that's who knows what, maybe a yellow triangle or an exclamation point. But what they're going to try to do is to affirmatively say to people, your data is not secure on this connection.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
Depends how they do it.
Yeah.
An unlocked padlock was there for years. That's how Netscape did it, remember?
Yeah, but you had to go looking for it.
Yeah, it was like at the bottom of the...
Right. And so the idea will be, this will be in the URL bar. It'll be, in your face so that you're not, so that you're being, their idea is to put pressure on those websites that will display that in order to induce them to go get themselves the free cert through the EFF system. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just
be ready.
It'd be nice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see what they do.
Turns out that there was a major unreported cyber attack that went unreported from February 10th when it occurred until just a few days ago against Sheldon Adelson and his Sands properties, the Venetian and the Plaza. This was on February 10th that they got hit by something that is reminiscent of the Sony attack, but different, because this didn't appear to be about exfiltrating incredible amounts of information, as did happen with the Sony attack, but rather deliberately attacking to hurt Sheldon and his properties. It's believed that this is a direct consequence of him making some very inflammatory statements a few months before that. Like I think it was October of 2013, he was on a panel in Manhattan where he came down, very, essentially ruthlessly against Iran, and they were able to verify that these were hackers that were traced back to Iran, and the point was made in the analysis that independent entities don't do anything without the Iranian government knowing what they're doing. So the sense being this had to have backing of the government. People, our listeners, and my Twitter followers have commented that it's annoying we don't know more about the technology of the Sony attack and hack. What's fun is a lot is known and is now available about this attack that happened on February 10th. In fact, I wanted to aim people at the story, which was covered in Business Week. So I created a bit.ly shortcut to help people do it. bit.ly/SANDS, SANDS -attack, all lowercase, because there's lots of information. They found, for example, a very small script that was written in Visual Basic, of all things, was installed in the system and was implicated in this destruction. This thing wiped out servers, it wiped out hard drives, it flew through the network and caused, what essentially was, they're estimating about $40 million worth of damage to the network infrastructure that the Las Vegas casinos run on. And it also demonstrates the kind of the sort of the nature of the attack. When we were talking about the Sony attack last week, I talked about how what normally happens with these advanced persistent threats is that bad guys get a foothold somewhere. They get a toe in the door. Somewhere they're in a sprawling network, there is some little mistake made. This report explains that. And I don't remember now the details. It was in a completely different geographically remote casino, because Sheldon has a bunch spread all over Asia, and not only in Las Vegas, but also, around the world. There was one casino where a small mistake was made that, I remember what it was. And a brute force attack on their VPN was detected. And because that's relatively common, they thought, okay, well, yeah, people are trying to crack our VPN. And so this was a VPN into the internal network at that facility. And somehow the bad guys found a way in. And then that was their foothold. And then they were able to use that in order to jump over to the main Las Vegas properties network and set up their, major devastating attack. So anyway, the article was interesting because it had a lot more detail about the way this was done. And so I thought our listeners would find it interesting.
Actually, the couple of people want to know who Shelley is. And one of the reasons we're all very interested in this is because we all know Shelley.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Because he was the founder of
Shelley
Condex.
He is the, 43rd, 44th most richest person in the world, or maybe it's that he has $43 billion.
He has $43 billion. Most of that. So the story of Shelley is fascinating. He created Comdex.
Yes.
And got out just in the nick of time. And as far as I know, that's where he got his first billion. He sold the trade show. And then he built casinos in Macau. That's where his big money came from. But he does also on the Sands.
But isn't that relatively recent? I thought those were newer than his Sands properties.
They're pretty new.
Yeah.
And that's when he really started to cash in.
Right. Well, because in fact, those are generating massive revenues for him.
The other thing I think is salient in this is what we were talking about when we talked about the Sony thing last week. You could say, well, Sony Pictures Entertainment, they didn't really worry about security. You can bet these are the computers that operate the slots. They operate the security in the casinos. These are big, big targets for money. So you can bet they were state-of-the-art secured, I would guess, wouldn't you?
Yes. Well, yeah. For example, they knew when somebody was pursuing a brute force attack on their VPN. So, that demonstrates they were looking at bandwidth and they were looking at logs, and the fact that they've been able to recreate that's why this article is so interesting. They were able to recreate the footprints of these attackers. They know where they got in, when they got in, what they did, how they moved across networks, and you only can do that if you've got really good logging in place. Right. They obviously didn't stop them, but they were at least able to retrospectively.
Well, partly that's because these guys had no incentive to cover their tracks. They aren't going to get arrested for this, right?
Right, and that was another interesting point. Is that this article talked about the fact that what we're seeing now are cyber attacks against small pieces of U.S. infrastructure, and in the case of the U.S., that don't motivate the government to respond. That is, it's too bad Sony got blasted, and so, too bad Shelley got hit. But, that doesn't merit a military response from the U.S. government. And so the article drew an interesting distinction that this was sort of, these attacks were maybe what we're going to be seeing in the future was things that sort of slipped under the radar, but we're still doing substantial damage to small pieces of U.S. Domestic infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, this was clearly targeted at Shelley. He's very pro-Israel. He's very active, gives a lot of money. In fact, he supported the Newt Gingrich campaign well beyond its Stay Fresh date. But the interesting thing is, to me, is that here you have something that's highly secured, and they still got in. And that was our point last week, which is you can say all you want about what a crap job Sony did, But I think a determined attacker with some skills and maybe a government behind them, it's going to be hard. We are, along with this news is news that the United States is very actively going into the grid and trying to protect all those systems on the grid, many of which are run by independent third parties who have not great practices. That's, I mean, if you really want a cyber war, you go after infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that's the point, is that that's the kind of thing that could rally a military response from the U.S. if a foreign country was affirmatively found to be responsible for producing, damage to the public infrastructure as opposed to pieces of much smaller private infrastructure.
Right. Easier.
We'll see.
Easier. Although I got to think there's nothing more secure than a casino. I mean, this is the back office operation of the Sands Casino.
You raise a really good point, and a lot of the questions that we have today are people following up from last week's discussion about the Sony breach. Yeah. But no, your point is 100%. I mean, their security had to be top notch, and yet, and this was the point that I made last week when because from a standpoint of the things that interest our audience, the question is, how do you prevent what happened to Sony?
Exactly.
And I rather gloomily said, I don't think you can.
I don't know.
And so the point is that, again, their network, despite all of the focus that, as you rightly point out, they brought to bear on security, in these casinos, they still got hit really hard. Yeah. I mean, they were. The story explains they were running around pulling the network cables out of machines that hadn't yet come down because this thing was just rifling.
Air gap it.
Because drives were being wiped by this thing.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Pretty amazing.
So, the ethics of disclosure.
I want to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Bloomberg View did a really nice article yesterday titled, the headline was "Keep Publishing the Sony Emails." And from all the conversation that I've seen over the last week and reading, and there's also been some interesting legal opinion, one of the determiners of what, like, that the press might use to decide what they say and what they deliberately withhold out of respect for the privacy rights of somebody whose information was stolen. And for example, we were talking about, comparing email content to nude photos of Hollywood people, is whether the disclosure is in the public interest. That is, does it serve a valid public interest?
Boy, I want to hear this logic.
Okay.
I mean, you can make the argument the Pentagon Papers, which were illegally obtained, classified documents, it absolutely served the public interest for the New York Times to publish those. I don't know if you can make the same argument about Amy Pascal's emails about the negotiations over the interview.
I have one.
Okay, I'd like to hear it. Because I disagree. So, we have intentionally stayed away from the content.
You haven't heard it. You haven't heard it yet.
Let me hear it.
So you can't okay.
No, I didn't say I disagree with it. But I have said up to now, and my problem is that Bloomberg and all these people have a vested interest in publishing this stuff. It's great for business.
It's also good for something else.
Okay, good. I want to hear the public wheel.
Okay, so the next step from the Pentagon Papers is, of course, the Snowden leaks. And
absolutely.
And I, again, absolutely feel, as I said the day we first reported this, that while I could never do it because oaths are oaths, I thought this was a good thing. And, a year later, I remember saying when we were sort of testing that again, can we imagine having, standing here today not knowing what we know? That is, hasn't that been valuable? And, of course, the NSA and law enforcement would adamantly disagree that this was in the public interest. And of course, that's the point. The direct upshot of what Snowden did, of those leaks, has been a year that we've chronicled here on the podcast of radical change in the industry's security posture. We've suddenly seen Google go crazy, if not overboard, in pushing security. We've got, Apple advertising as a marketing feature the fact that they can no longer decrypt people's phones, where in the past they were able to respond to the letters requiring them to do so. Google has announced that Android will be following. We've got third-party communication apps coming out constantly. And whereas previously our acronym on the podcast, TNO, Trust No One, was something that, we and our listeners understood and cared about, suddenly now everyone cares about it. So that there has been a massive benefit of public security that is a direct consequence of what Snowden showed us was going on. So, Sony's also certainly not happy that these details are being published. And, I have no interest in the underwear of executives. I mean, I don't care about that. But I'm not sure that the message would have gotten through to the degree it has were it not for these details. That is, last week, I took the time to enumerate much more clearly the kind of content. I mean, the least disclosure is to say, 12 plus terabytes. Okay, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. So I understood that it was important to say, yes, but that's salary ledgers and financial reports and income projections and blah, 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 blah. And so that I thought helped to by further enumerating and making more clear the nature of what this loss meant, helped it to hit home. And while, I have no interest and I haven't looked at or gone seeking any of the details of the email, it's been all the buzz in the press. And we've, and it's evoked apologies and all kinds of additional pain. And while I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, the sad thing is, I think it's human nature that's what it takes for people who really need to be pushed to increase the level of their security to do so. That is, there are certainly executives now, and actually I've received email from people saying, like prominent people, how do we get ourselves secure? Because the nature of this, the details are unfortunately necessary in order to get people to understand what it really means. And so I would argue that that's in the public interest. It's in the public interest, in corporate interest, if it finally penetrates the thick skulls of the CEO and the COO, that they're going to have to spend the money that the CIO has been begging for in order to implement better security, because security is hard. It's painful. It's difficult. And increasing it is a good thing. So that's my argument.
I totally disagree. So it would be like saying, hey, you just got robbed of $100,000 by leaving your door unlocked. But we're going to keep the money so that you learn the lesson that you ought to lock the door. This is stolen material. There's no excuse for telling people what somebody made to make a movie. The list you gave, I have no problem with the list you gave, or I would have stopped you. The list you gave is completely appropriate and fine.
Right.
I don't think the contents of those emails should be disclosed. I think they're stolen goods. I think it's as bad as showing the naked pictures. The press would have shown the naked pictures if they thought they could have gotten away with it. The only reason they didn't is because they were naked pictures. This is just as good as far as they're concerned. Is going to generate just as many clicks. And I think every argument I hear for releasing the salacious details of the Sony leak is an argument from somebody who says, I'm going to make money on this because we're going to get lots of clicks. I don't see how that improves. Look, Sony knows what got stolen. I don't think this improves their attitude. And what you listed, I like what you listed. I think there's nothing wrong with saying, here's what they got,
right,
without revealing the details. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think what Sony's saying is stop publishing our private emails. Those are private. I don't think they should be published by journalistic entities who are equating it with Snowden's revelations. These are not Snowden's revelations. Anyway, you stand firm.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see your point. It's not Sony we're trying to teach a lesson to, though. That horse has left the barn. It's the other companies whose behavior could improve, but only if they understand
I don't think it's The Verge's job to make these other companies improve their security. I don't think it improves the public. There's no public benefit from us knowing how much, James Franco got for being in the interview. I don't get it. I don't get the value. I agree. Believe me, I'm a firm defender of the Fourth Estate and the right of the press and the people's right to know if it affects the people. You can't make that argument that any of this salacious stuff affects the people. They're publishing it because we love reading it. And I confess, until I really kind of thought about this, I was reading all those articles, and I even reported one tidbit, which was that what James Franco got paid for driving himself to work, because wow, what a story. But as I started to see more and more, I started to really feel for these people. And these people are not the people who were responsible for the poor lack of security.
Correct.
I don't understand why Seth Rogen and James Franco should have to suffer because some CIO didn't do his job. And I don't see how it benefits any of us for them to have that information revealed.
Right. Well, and Brian Krebs reported, he said, over the weekend, I received a nice holiday letter from lawyers representing Sony Pictures Entertainment, demanding that I cease publishing detailed stories about the company's recent hacking and delete any company data collected in the process of reporting on the breach. While I've not been the most prolific writer about this incident to date, rest assured such threats will not deter this reporter from covering important news and facts related to the breach.
Nor should they.
Right.
I'm with him on that.
Right. And so the letter that he received said SPE, and this, of course, is from our friend David Boies, who is the attorney who stepped into this. Yeah, Boies. It said SPE, Sony Pictures Entertainment, does not consent to your possession, review, copying, dissemination, publication, uploading, downloading, or making any use of the stolen information, and to request your cooperation in destroying the stolen information, said SPE lawyers, and that's what Brian wrote. So
I wouldn't want my private emails to be revealed to benefit. I don't know, to make people be more secure. I'm sure you wouldn't either. I've had my private emails.
No, it's again, it's not. No, there's no question that the degree to which this is bad for Sony affects other companies' security. That's my belief.
But I also agree with you and Brian that a free press does not get deterred by this kind of thing. But I would guess that Brian is not. I mean, his audience doesn't care about the details of what was
He's
leaked.
like our audience. It's like ours, where we were talking about, the
security implications.
The security implications and a broad stroke appreciation for, what this meant from a security standpoint.
Right. I would also say, hey, be careful what you defend in case it comes back to haunt you. I wonder how the editors at some of these publications would feel if the same thing happened to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my point is nobody would think this is good, but security is hard, and it needs respect. It needs attention. It needs money.
Right. Well, I agree with you on that. But if you just say all the stuff that they got, isn't that sufficient? You have to embarrass people for others to take security seriously. That's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
But maybe that's the state we're in.
Verizon last Thursday introduced to some fanfare voice cipher, along with the encryption company who created it called Cellcrypt. And they said this offers business and government customers end-to-end encryption for voice calls on iOS, Android, or BlackBerry devices equipped with their special app. The encryption software provides secure communications for people speaking on devices with the app. Now, this is not me speaking. This is them, because otherwise I'd be putting air quotes around all this, regardless of their wireless carrier. And it can also connect to an organization's secure phone system. And then they said Cellcrypt and Verizon both say that law enforcement agencies will be able to access communications that take place over voice cipher so long as they're able to prove that there's a legitimate law enforcement reason for doing so. And the vice president, the North American vice president of Cellcrypt, a guy named Seth Polanski, disputed the idea that building technology to allow wiretapping is a security risk. He said, it's only creating a weakness when it's a legitimate government agency request. Just because a government access option exists doesn't mean other companies can access it. And then, as if that wasn't all just crazy enough, I love their slogan. They doubled down with the slogan, security when it matters most, which of course is exactly what it isn't, because when it matters most, the government is able to wiretap it. So anyway, I just got a kick out of this, that I think it's also not cheap. It's the app is free to download, but in the announcement, I remember seeing like $45 a month you pay for the privilege of this Verizon-backed, point-to-point voice encryption. We already have free solutions that do this, that we've talked about on the podcast. So it's like, well, I'm sure there will be users of it. Okay. I did forget to mention last week, and I intended to, that there was just in miscellaneous sci-fi notes that there was a 3-night miniseries that would be airing on the Sci-Fi Channel. The first chapter was last night. I did tweet it yesterday beforehand, and I know that a bunch of my followers had intended to DVR it and then did. So I was glad I remembered at least then. I'm sure that Sci-Fi will be re-airing it. If they're not re-airing last night's tonight, they tend to re-air this a lot. So it's yesterday the 15th, today the 16th, and tomorrow the 17th, called Ascension. And I watched the first hour of it before it got to be my bedtime, and I decided, okay, well, I maybe will finish the rest of last night's and then see. I got a lot of feedback from people who thought it was great. It's okay. We're sort of in a sci-fi desert at the moment, or drought. So it's sort of typical of what you get from them. And Leo, do you know what this site GOG.com is?
GOG?
GOG.com.
No.
A listener, Isaac Johns in Louisiana, sent us a note about Abe. He said Abe's Oddworld has been out.
Oh, good
for
old
PC.
games. I do know about good old games. Yeah, love good old games. Yeah.
So they're legitimate?
Oh, yeah. These are all licensed. These are licensed.
Oh, good. Because the Oddworld series for the PC is like $5 or $6. So if you search for Oddworld, you'll find 3 of them: Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exodus, and Stranger's Wrath, downloadable for the PC. So I did want, because we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks due to its rebirth on the PS4 and on the iPad. I'm glad to know these guys are legit. And if anyone is interested, I really, again, for $6, if you've got a PC, it's certainly, I remember you running it on a PC 20 years ago. So you don't need some fancy state-of-the-art
game.
Yeah, you don't need a fancy gaming box. Anything will run this.
Actually, no, it's Windows XP or better, it says.
Yeah, so XP.
Yeah. That is great.
So
I'm happy to hear.
I wanted to give our listeners a heads up that was there. And boy, just looking at those screenshots, Leo, just gotta I feel nostalgic.
Brings back the memories. What a great game.
So well done.
Yeah.
So well done.
And the whole plan, as we mentioned, was to have a whole Oddworld, universe that would go on.
Yeah.
On.
A quintology was what was originally targeted. What they ended up doing, they did. The Abe was the first character, then Munch was the second.
Right.
And so they introduced Munch, who was like a weird little guy who kind of waddled around. And then they did they sort of went off plan and did a second, like a sequel to Abe, because the first one was, so they're right, there's Munch's Odyssey, and that was the second one. Then they did Abe's Exodus to follow Abe's Odyssey. To create the first 3.
They've kind of kept going in ways that I didn't really realize. There's a few more of them here.
Yeah.
So Munch's Odyssey HD came out for the PS3 a couple of years ago. New and Tasty.
And that's the very new one, which is now. Yep. And that's on the PS4, and it'll be coming out with other platforms. But basically, it's a remake of the original Abe's Odyssey, which you can get for $6 for the PC. And especially if you've got kids, I can't think of anything. I mean, it is like PG rated. I mean, there's a grinder, but
it's perfect because it's a little bit gory.
It's a little edgy, right? So
edgy.
Your kids aren't going to think you're a wimp. They're going to think, okay, Dad's cool. He knew about this.
Yeah. Like I said, I played this with Henry when he was probably 9 or 10, and he and I both have very fond memories of playing this game. This is the last one, Stranger's Wrath.
Yeah, it'll run on the machine you've got in the garage. So
now I have to get a Windows machine. I wonder if those HP streams, it'd be worth buying a $200 HP stream just to play this game. Maybe
it would. Maybe. It would. Yeah. And while I was going through the mailbag for today's Q&A, I ran across a nice note. I don't seem to have the guy's name here. Normally I think it actually was. He sent it to me anonymously. But it was Friday, December 12th. The subject was Spinrite saved a server RAID array. And this caught my attention because he came very close to the point of no return, but also is clearly operating some major facility. He said, Steve, every weekday morning, I do a visual. So every weekday morning, probably when he goes in, I do a visual inspection of our servers for any issues. He says in parens, scanning the server status screens and hard drive LEDs. I'm also responsible for backups. One morning, I was checking the previous evening's backups on one of our NAS servers, network attached storage. I noticed a major read-write error in the backup log, causing the backup job to fail completely. Checking if the backup volume was mounted correctly, I immediately noticed that the volume had disappeared. I then began scouring the system logs, and sure enough, we had a drive failure in our RAID 5 array. Come to find out, we had another drive failure at a prior time, which makes 2 drive failures at this point, causing the entire array to be lost. Because remember that array 5 it can tolerate 1 drive failure because essentially it sort of runs like a checksum drive. And so any of the remaining can reconstruct the entire RAID content, but you only get 1. That's why I'm running RAID 6. He said, these 2 failures slipped by me since the visual inspection on this one custom-built server fails to indicate a problem for any of the drives. It only shows a green LED for power. And that's a little scary because typical drive backplanes now will show you like a red or sometimes yellow error light if the drive is having problem, separate from drive activity, or in this case, drive power. So he just, his visual scan wasn't showing that one drive had died some time ago, and now finally a second one followed it. He said, figuring out the problem took only minutes, and looking at what the logs were telling me, my mind immediately went to a previous episode of Security Now. In that episode, you were discussing how a SpinRite customer was able to save his or her RAID array by removing the drive and booting it as a standalone drive connected via a separate interface. I thought, I can do this. So he says, I removed the first failed drive, connected to a laptop via a SATA to USB interface, and booted SpinRite. I immediately heard some truly awful sounds coming from the drive. Well, that sounds bad, and sure enough, I could not get SpinRite or the laptop to recognize that drive at all. Trying the second bad drive, it booted and SpinRite saw it. Running level 2, I noticed that at times the drive would seem to have a hard time reading a sector. After a few seconds, it would work through it and go on to the next sector, which of course is exactly the behavior that SpinRite users through the last couple decades have seen. And that's what SpinRite does, is it sits there and fixes that sector, and then we get to move on. He says, I ran SpinRite until 50% completion and decided to give it a try back in the server. Sure enough, the drive came back up, and the RAID controller gave me the OK, and the RAID volume is back up, but in degraded mode since the complete loss of the other drive. I was able to get all of this done within one workday and had backups running again that evening with no data loss. I've got 2 new drives on the way, and will be replacing them and rebuilding the array as time permits. Thank you for a great product. And whoever you are, thank you for the great testimonial. I really appreciate it.
Steve, we're going to take a break. When we come back, questions for you from our
cool.
vast viewing audience. Our show today, though, brought to you by our good friends Tim and Don at IT Pro TV. They're the folks who, for years, were teaching people how to, polish their IT skills, how to get the certs they needed to get jobs in IT. They kind of decided to do something a little bit like Twit. In fact, it says right here, IT Pro TV was built by fans of Twit for fans of Twit. They were inspired by the idea that they could actually do video, teach this stuff in a way that people enjoyed. It was easy to absorb. And now they've got it. IT Pro, even on your Roku, which is awesome. You can watch itpro.tv. If you go to itpro.tv/security now, you'll see all the different courses they have. Let's see. I think they're live right now. Now let's check in. They do about 30 hours of new programming each and every week. There they are. There's Don teaching something about Google, it looks like. If you look at the course library, you'll see how vast it has become. They're doing now Mac integration basics, Mac management basics, CompTIA, that includes the A+, Net+, Security+, Linux Plus, and Cloud Plus certs, Microsoft with the MCSA, you've got and MCSE, you've got Cisco, you've got ISC Squared. In fact, they've got some great classes in security. The new ISC Squared cert is really cool. One low monthly subscription price gets you everything. So you don't have to decide. Look at all the Office stuff, project management, VMware, Zen server Wireshark. They've got a course on how to use Wireshark. I love that. Subscription's normally $57 a month, but now, or $570 for the entire year, but now you can sign up and get 30% off for the lifetime of your subscription when you use the offer code SN30. So I want you to go to itpro.tv/security now. What else do you get? Oh my gosh. You get the Measure Up practice exams. They're included with your subscription. That's worth $79. You also can get their incredible virtual machine sandbox lab, which is fantastic. So you don't even have to have Windows Server or Windows clients. Any HTML5 browser, you go into the lab and you're there, you're working. And if you screw it up, who cares? You just close out the instance and start over. Even if you're already studying with a book or enrolled in a cert or technical degree program, this is a great supplement. You can learn at your own pace. You'll enjoy it. Put it up on the Roku. It'll just soak in. IT, you're soaking in it. Track your progress, manage your learning. And with a year's subscription, an annual subscription, you can even download all the episodes DRM free and put them on your tablet for offline consumption. Check out itpro.tv/security now. Upgrade your brain with the most popular IT certs recognized by employers. And now you can get a free 7-day trial when you sign up using our offer code, which means you've got a week to check out the courses, the live stream, and more. See, they even have a chat room going on during the courses, just like us. itpro.tv/security now. Oh, here's a nice benefit. They're celebrating their anniversary. And so for all of you who subscribed early on, when you reach your 13th month, they're going to reduce your subscription rate even further. Now it's $24.95 a month or $249 for the whole year. That's nice, just to celebrate. itpro.tv/security now. The offer code SN30. Try it free for 7 days and get 30% off the lifetime of your account. Happy anniversary. Congratulations to Don and Tim and the gang on their success at itpro.tv/security now. Stephen Tiberius Gibson. He is at SGGRC on the Twitter. That's one way you can ask questions. You also can go to his website, grc.com/feedback. Ask questions there. And you have cobbled together some questions from our audience. You ready?
You bet. I was going to say that we've really developed a nice little community over on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's vibrant, and I get great tips and leads from people who want to make sure that I've seen stuff, and I'm able to answer short questions. And I always I get up in the morning and I scroll back and catch up with what has gone on while I've been unconscious. And so, yeah, it's really been a good thing.
And they're global. They're all over the world like this. The first question comes from Dorset in the United Kingdom. Andrew Stevenson wonders about the Poodle TLS attack. Steve, Leo, Ivan Ristic over... He doesn't talk like that. Ivan Ristic over... I'm doing the Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. Ivan Ristic over at SSL Labs has implemented a test for Poodle. Oh, of course Ivan has. Against TLS. My question, does this attack deserve an F rating? Do you think this attack is more damaging than Poodle against SSL3? Also, have you seen that SSL Labs now demotes sites to a grade B if they support RC4 ciphers? To reacquire your previous, I guess, I'm thinking Michael might just happen to have or Andrew might happen to have a site with a B rating. To recover your previous A+ rating for grc.com, you mean you don't have one, Steve?
No.
You'd have to remove RC4 ciphers, disable SSL3, upgrade to SHA2 certs, install TLS fallback SCSV, downgrade attack prevention, etc., etc., etc. What do you say?
So, okay. So GRC used to be A+ rated at SSL Lab.
Man.
And we're back to a C.
Rating C?
A C. As a consequence of a number of things. I'm still opting for compatibility. And the problem is the GRC is HTTPS, meaning if you even try to connect to me HTTP, the first thing the server does is bounce your browser over to S. There's no way to access, to get in the front door without security. And of course, then I also have an HA STS, the simple transport security header that with a long life, which Ivan gives me good credit for. He likes the fact that I'm doing that. So I'm telling all browsers, remember that we're only secure. The problem is there's still a big install base of users who I don't want to deny access unless they have the latest and greatest. We know that they're out there. They're unable to use SHA 256 because they don't have Service Pack 3 of XP. They've got something older than that. So I'm going to tolerate for, I don't know how long, maybe 6 months into 2015, a substandard grade from SSL Labs on purpose. There's nothing wrong with GRC's security. That I do have prevention against like insecurity for e-commerce, because I don't even use or require security for like cookies, for example, for handling our sessions. So there's nothing for Poodle to get that GRC is doing. That said, we're sort of there's tension that we've talked about before, and that's my favorite word to describe this, because certainly Ivan's whole point of having SSL Labs grading websites is to find problems with them. That's his deal. Mine is to offer a service to as many people as I can. And meanwhile, against the backdrop of us moving forward with standards. So I do think it's time that I drop RC4. And at that point, I think I get to pop up to a B rating. So I won't have the A+ that I had a few months ago before we knew that there were these additional, at the time, unseen problems in the protocol. I'm doing everything the same, but now we've decided, okay, this is a problem. And so I am going to drop RC4 and I'll disable SSL. But I'm gonna hang back with SHA1 certificates, because there's nothing that anyone knows is wrong with those. And we will see how Chrome moves forward with their push for SHA 256, which I support, and I'll switch over to those. But I'm gonna hang back. The idea will be that as other sites switch, that will create pain for the people who still can't do SHA 256. They will be forced to use Chrome or to use Firefox. They will no longer be able to use IE. I want them to still be able to get to grc.com. So I'm going to lag on that, and then I will make a switch. And of course, if we do find that like something is surprisingly wrong with SHA1, which nobody at this point expects, then I can easily switch over to 256. So yeah, I'm going to tolerate. I'll bring my grade up to a B, I think, by agreeing that RC4, it's time to say goodbye to that, and SSL3, it's now time not to allow a downgrade to SSL3. It would be nice if Microsoft adds this TLS fallback to their offerings. We'll see if they do that, because if they would add that to server platforms that they're still supporting, and they're still supporting my Windows Server 2008 R2, if we could get that feature in an update, then that would be a good thing too. That would help everybody. But I can get rid of SSL3 without a problem.
I think there's a little bit of... I'm a little dubious about Ivan being the arbiter of what is good and wholesome on the net. And I was just a little uncomfortable with recommending SSL Labs tests for that reason. It's just one guy's opinion. Well, and it's, I mean, I guess the problem is that it's hard not to give a grade.
I mean, that's such a powerful psychological thing to get and I loved having an A+ while I was A+. I only had that for a few months, and then I, fell back off of the leading edge of the cipher curve. It would be a little nicer. I mean, he does break it all down. So somebody who cares can look at the things that I'm doing and see, oh, look, Steve's supporting perfect forward secrecy, like with all of the ciphers anyone is using. And way down at the bottom, there's a couple RC4s because he doesn't want to lock somebody out who wants to get to his site for the purpose of using the services at GRC. If I were to do that, nobody could ever use GRC, and that bites a little bit. So I'm gonna lag on that.
Sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. This would be a good example of that. Phil S. in Central New York coins the term the Gibson comma. And there's a Twitter account called the Oxford comma that tweeted me, Leo, do you support or do you not the Oxford comma? Hi, Steve. Avid listener. I haven't responded yet. Avid listener from Central New York here. During the past few months, my team and I have been patching our web servers monthly, thanks to Poodle and the Microsoft patches and so on. We value and use your cipher suites list for our hardening procedures. Oh, that's great. That's on grc.com. You can go to bit.ly/GRC ciphers with an I. But I discovered a missing comma, oh dear, oh Lord, on line 24, which we've dubbed the Gibson comma. Oh, a quick fix on your end, but while you're in there, can you review and update the suites as SSL Labs is capping grades to B when it sees RC4? Many thanks, Phil. Did you fix the comma? Did you fix? No, because I wanted you to click on the link first. So when I first saw this... Oh, it's a joke. I get it.
No. It's real. When I first saw this, I thought it said the Gibson coma. And I thought, what? That doesn't sound good. I don't want to be inducing a coma in anybody. Anyway, so you can see like the fourth from the end, and it happens to be, I think, one of the RC4 lines. So what this is, yep, there. Oh, it's at the end of the MD5. It's missing its comma there. So that's the Gibson lack of comma. So what that is
you got a new line. I don't think you need a comma and a new line, okay? I'm just saying.
Yeah. So this is for Windows servers. I went through and looked at all the available cipher suites and carefully hand-tuned the list in order of the one we would prefer that a client connected with first. So it's very carefully designed for maximum forward secrecy and maximum security as we go down the list so it goes from strongest to weakest that are currently offered by Windows server platforms.
I would presume the server would query in that order, right? It would try to connect with the first one and then the second and then the third.
Well, what happens is the client. And remember, in the TLS handshake, the client offers all the ones it has, and so the server then uses the sequence that I have created, going down its list, looking for the first match with any of the ones in the client. Right. Thus, we get the strongest negotiated security available. And so I have been needing to go back in because with that update a couple months ago, I think it was 2 months ago, I want to say it was 068 was the Microsoft update. That was the one that silently fixed a problem that had not previously been disclosed and treated us to 4 new cipher suites, which were really new and tasty, to borrow Oddword's title. And so I've been wanting to merge those in and that would, of course, I'll push some of the RC4 ciphers off the bottom and then pop my grade up at SSL Labs from a embarrassing C to a, somewhat less embarrassing B. At least I could maybe beg my way into a good school.
Well, yeah, gentleman C is not going to work here, I think. You need to step up your game.
So for anyone who's interested, as you said, it's
and fix the comma.
bit.ly. Yes. Yes. Thank you for, bit.ly/GRCCIPHERS is the list. But that's the old one. If you look at it and you see that there's a comma missing from the fourth to the last line, and there's still some RC4s, then you know you don't have the new one. I'll be getting to that here.
That's why you left the comma out. Now we know. So people can tell if it was
it's a canary.
Canary.
Yeah. It's really weird too, because Microsoft has a character limit on the length that string can be. So I put in new lines so that to make it visually clear. But to use it, you have to remove the new lines and then cut and paste it into the registry. And I think it's 2048. But there's and the problem is there are more useful ciphers that you'd like to have that are available, except you run out of room because they're too long. And so it's so it really is sort of a balancing act. You got to you've only got 2048 characters. I think that's what it was. And so you've got to go through and go, okay, well, we don't have room for this one, but we do have room for that one. And so you have to deliberately withhold some you'd like to have in the interest of compatibility. That's why, I spent some time building this list and people are using it with their servers. So there.
It's very cool. How did you build the list? Could you pull it from the code or?
There's a in the registry help. It gives you a list of all of them, and so I copied that out. And it also says, "But warning: the string you provide can only be 2,047 characters long." And it's like, okay, is that going to be a problem? And so then I look, and the list is like 3K long. So it's like, yes, that's going to be a problem. I can't have them all.
I love it.
They got to fix that. That's ridiculous. I don't know. Come on.
Ron in Daytona Beach, Florida. He's got a question about VPN usage and spying. I use a VPN most of the time using ProXPN, our fine sponsor. Thank you, Ron. Question. When I connect, I have many choices of terminating VPN locations. Yeah, that's one of their features. The U.S. one gave me the best performance. Well, it makes sense. It's geographically proximate. However, I feel that when I connect to one of the U.S. ones, my traffic is still subject to spying. Oh, no. I'm guessing my ISP can't track me directly anymore, but the National Spy Agency is still collecting my packets. Is this true, or am I just being overly paranoid?
So we see this question in various forms, and I know you get it a lot, Leo.
Yeah.
I've heard listeners on your Sunday or your weekend show, the Tech Guy show, asking. The question would be, do you think the NSA is specifically capturing traffic from the ProXPN servers more than they're capturing traffic coming in to the U.S. through the fiber optic undersea cables? And maybe it's all of the above. But I guarantee you that there are taps on all of the oceanic cables coming into the country, because that's where terrorists are, presumably, and their articulated responsibility is to protect us from them. So we know they're tapping traffic coming into the country. We also know that they're sniffing what they can get that's available within the country. Unfortunately, there's that room that we know about in LA, or was it San Francisco, where the fiber optic tap was installed that we originally talked about a year and a half ago.
AT&T WorldNet in San Francisco. Yeah. So
I don't really think there's a difference. What the VPN certainly does is it protects your ISP from collecting any metadata. Metadata, of course, is even if they can't decrypt what you're doing because you're over SSL or TLS. Boy, I wish they hadn't changed the name. That just really annoys me. I guess I just have to refer to TLS. Everybody knows what that is now. They can't see what's in there, but they can see the IPs that you're visiting, and they can see the DNS queries that you're making. So running through the VPN does prevent that. It prevents any visibility into your traffic until it gets to that server. But as for NSA difference, can't say that I would imagine it makes a difference. We will soon, eventually, when the world lets us, get to our podcast about the Tor de-anonymizing, which is on my very short list of things to talk about, because, as I mentioned, it looks like it's not quite providing the protection that we were hoping under some circumstances. But short of that, I think that the VPN offers local protection, but probably doesn't matter too much whether the NSA is, checking or not. I think there is likely to be looking at traffic coming into the U.S. if you connect to an extraterritorial VPN server.
Strikes me that if people took the energy that they spent trying to protect themselves, possibly futilely against snooping by the spy services, and instead directed that energy towards our members of Congress saying, fix this, that'd be a more useful use of your juice.
Or both. Let's do both.
You could do both. But boy, people spend so much energy on, well, is this safe? Are they going to be able to spy on me here? Just send a couple of messages to your member of Congress, too, as long as you're doing that. Because that's really the only way, and maybe even that's not going to be good enough, but that's the only route to getting this.
Leo, I think we're heading for legislation which mandates a backdoor.
Yeah, we do it does look like that. You got your Ron Wydens on the one hand, and you got your backdoor guys on the other.
Yeah, and I mean, the boogeyman of protecting us from the bad guys is the whole terrorism argument, and the argument, we talked last week about Posner saying, I can't believe it's legal for anyone to sell a phone that can't be decrypted. It's like, oh goodness. I mean, I just think we're losing this. And, I predicted a few years ago, which is why I suspended work on CryptoLink, because I thought, well, I don't want the government to come along and say, Gibson, you got to build a backdoor into the VPN. You just spent all your time making absolutely secure. It's like, no.
Anthony Headley, who must also be from the UK, because that's a very British name, wondered, whatever happened to the Smushbox? Hey, Steve, whatever happened to Mark Thompson and company's Smushbox? In the last episode, Leo remarked the guys from IT Pro were sending SMS notifications, and I was reminded of Smushbox. Yeah, we ordered one. I have one. I know you do too, Steve. From their site, I see they had a rocky start due to some faulty micro SDs. They offered to fix the issue. That seems to have solved the issue. Where does that stand right now, Steve? I'm just wondering if either of you have received your boxes. Yes. Do they work? Can't tell you because I haven't set it up. Thanks. Love the blah, 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 Anthony.
So we've talked about it since, and I need to distance Mark Thompson from this. It wasn't his company. It was some guys that he knew of, and I knew of them because I know of him. And he thought it was a cool thing. I mean, he thought it was a neat idea. And, you and I agreed, Leo, and we both got them. The problem was, or part of the deal was, they had a special deal with T-Mobile so that for $20 a month, you could have unlimited number of messages that this Smushbox would send. That was what that was about.
And that ran out.
And yes, and that's what happened. Was it turns out that one hand didn't know what the other was doing. They got into some fights with T-Mobile, and so they did send an email out to all the Smushbox owners apologizing for the fact that they were unable ultimately to honor the original contract.
But this will still work. I just have to pay more. Is
Precisely.
That right?
So, yes. So it is a beautiful, nice USB interface to text machine that can send out mass texts, but it's up to the individual to create an account with T-Mobile rather than all running it through a grandfathered, blanket $20 a month forever deal.
So somewhere I could put a SIM in
fell
here.
apart.
I presume.
It's got one built in. It's already in there.
So I would just call T-Mobile and say, "Hey, activate me, baby."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then you're able to send and receive texts with that. And so one of these days, you and I are going to figure out how that's useful. That's
well, I always, and we're as we know, we're designing a new Twit site, and it's kind of one of the things on our wish list to be able to send out text notifications when a live show begins recording, when a show has finished recording and is now in editing, and when a show ships.
Yeah, exactly. Like allow people to subscribe to a feed of real-time events. Yeah, very neat.
Well, that we can do, and we can easily do something that they pull, that this is pushed. So I don't know. I mean, it's easy to do something that's that you would poll us. In fact, that's kind of how RSS works anyway. iTunes
I think texting is just so ubiquitous and so simple that people are able to send back a stop if they don't want to receive that anymore, or and basically control it through text. I think it's cool. And look, you were even able to find yours. I don't know what mine's buried box.
You know what's bad? I can't find the documentation. Must be
been online.
Maybe it's on the website.
Yeah,
there's no documentation at all. It is pretty though. It wasn't
they did a
expensive.
beautiful job.
Yeah, my smoosh box. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got 4 more questions for Steve about all sorts of things. But first, a word from Steve's favorite razor company, Harry's.
I have to say, Leo, I get what's funny is that it feels like we must have put out a challenge at some point, or if not, people took it up themselves, because the tweets that I see are from people saying, I took the challenge. I tried every razor I have, and Harry's won.
Yeah, well, I think that's the interesting thing is it possible to have a better shaving experience? Are some blades better than other blades? And, all you can do is listen to me and Steve when we say yes. But you could take the Harry's Challenge. First of all, it's not that expensive. This is the Truman Kit for $15. Less than a pack of blades at your drugstore of those Gillette Fusion blades. What are those, about $4 each now?
That's the one I like with the plastic handle.
Yeah, you like the plastic. This is the Truman.
Yep.
So you get, for $15, you get the handle. You get 3 blades. You get, we don't mention this very often, but this is so useful. The blade cover that's for traveling. The little travel cover. Because I
didn't get one.
Oh, yeah, you did. You just probably threw it out thinking, well, that's just packaging. It ain't. Oh. See, it goes in there and it goes right in your DOP kit, and you don't cut yourself, and the blade can dry out and all that stuff. They now have, this is actually not part of the kit, so I should take it out. So you get the 3 blades, the handle, the cover, and you get the foaming gel, or you can get the cream. I like the cream. I don't know which one you use. You use the foaming gel?
I'm a gel. I'm a gel person.
All right. Yeah,
the cream seemed a little thick for me.
Yeah,
but you got to be careful though. That gel really.
Whoops! I got a gel explosion. Holy cow!
I learned a lesson. You got to just give it a.
Get the hazmat team in here.
Careful, it comes out.
And then you can get this online. So once you buy the kit, by the way, then you don't have to. But so if it passes muster, you can subscribe and you get the shave gel and razor blades delivered every month or so. They also have, and you can order this, the aftershave lotion, which is quite nice, and comes out in a little bit of a less aggressive fashion, and smells really good. Look at, guys, this is for you, a great shave at a fair price. You may say, well, how is it possible that this blade is better than the blade I'm going to get at the drugstore for less than half as much? I'll tell you, Harry's owns the factory. That makes a big difference. They found out that there are only 2 factories in the world that make great razor blades. They're both in Germany. So they went and they bought one. They have all the production of that factory, and they make great blades. And I can tell you, You want to do the Harry's test, shave the left half of your face with your Winston kit, shave the right half with whatever you're using. Do me a favor, don't get one of them disposable blades, because that's not even fair. That's just not even right. The $2 handle plus blade things, that's just, don't do that to your face. But once you try Harry's, I know you're going to say, this is amazing.
Everybody does.
Yeah. We have yet to have anybody say, no, I'm going to continue to use my, I don't know, straight razor. Actually, there's one guy in the chat room who likes his straight razor. That seems like a recipe for disaster. Speaking of disaster, what happened here? I had an explosion of shave gel. Thank you, John. Every time I open this kit, something bad happens. Last time you caught me shaving. I couldn't resist.
Oh, that was wonderful.
I opened it up and I said, it smells good. I could just, quick shave. You ended before I was ready. Harry's, HARRYS.com. You get $5 off your first order, but you got to use the offer code SECURITY now so they know where you heard it. And then you're going to get your Harry's delivery every month of blades. And I just love it. I really love it. Harry's, and so does Steve, obviously. Harrys.com. HARRYS.
And you won't be.
Harry. You won't.
Right.
You'll be clean shaven.
And have we decided it's Harry or Harry? We're just going with Harry now.
Sue, the writer, said I should say Harry. Harry, as opposed to Harry. She said you're pronouncing it the same way you pronounce Harry.
HAIRY.
Yeah.
Right.
And I said, well, that's how it's pronounced. No, it's Harry. Harry. Anyway,
Okay, I'm glad we're going with Harry.
Harry.
Yeah.
We're Californians. That's just how we talk. Question 5 from Michael Peters. He hails from Meerbusch, Germany. Meerbusch. He wonders about whitelisting executables. During the recent episode of Security Now, while you were talking about the Sony case, you mentioned whitelisting of executables is the only real way to keep the bad guys out. And indeed, I see this as the last chance left to get more security into a larger company network. For our company and our network, no user except the IT people should be able to launch any kind of program that hasn't been approved by the IT staff. Boy, that seems obvious.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we never took the time to give Windows App Locker a try, and I'm wondering whether such a scenario could be realistic, or am I missing something? Love your show. Although it frightens me more and more. Steve is really great, Leo too. Besides, it's helping me improve my English. Well, your English is perfect. Kind regards, Michael from Germany. We have an App Locker license. When we bought the new Dell machines for our editors, 6 of them, Russell talked me into, he said we should get App Locker too. I said, deal. So I don't think we've turned it on yet, but we haven't. The machines are just getting implemented now. So what is that?
App Locker is a feature that was introduced into Windows 7. And as we know, I will ultimately be moving from XP to 7, kicking and screaming at some point. I mean, I have 7 everywhere else, just not on my main system because it's such a pain. I mean, I have to start over. I have this incredibly mature, perfect, workstation with everything installed. And just the idea of starting over is daunting, and there's never time. We all, I got to say, okay, well, after Squirrel and after SpinRite 6.1, then maybe I'll make the switch. But the point is that it's built into Windows 7, and it's continued to thrive, and it's in Windows 8 as well. And it is a built-in. It's not. There's I think it's in Ultimate. And, they got all these different SKUs now. I don't think it's in Home or even Pro, but it is in Ultimate. And I'm going to deploy it from day one because
it's a little weird to do it on a home system. I mean, in a business, you can say, hey, you can use, Office and our line of business stuff, but you can't use any other apps. That's a reasonable thing for a business to do. But at home, don't you want to just do what you want to do?
Well, but it's me, And what I was going to say was,
can you unlock the locker?
No. So App Locker is an application whitelister. Right. So only the specific apps which have been whitelisted are allowed to execute.
Yeah, and a malware can't pose as one of those apps, right?
Precisely.
Is there a hash or something? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So and remember back in the day of Zone Alarm, there was the question of whether, and because Zone Alarm was a whitelisting firewall, you would, it would pop up and say, such and such wants to access the internet. And you'd look at it and go, okay, yeah. And then the question was whether malware could say that it's Internet Explorer, iexplore.exe, and sneak by. But it wasn't just a file name match. It was a match on the signature of the app itself. So it caught that. So that's what's built in to Windows 7 and 8. And I want to try it. One of the things that I do is I have some sounds associated with different events in Windows. And one of the events in Windows is application execution. And it's just a little snap sound. But every so often I'm like working and I hear snap, which means I didn't just start something, but something started. And I sometimes wonder what that was, because that would be a quick clue that something's in my system that I'm not aware of. So I'm going to do the experiment of, and this is the kind of thing that's difficult to turn on later because nothing will work, although you are able to put it in an audit mode, and that could be useful all on its own.
Yeah, you say, hey, audit what I'm doing right now because I know there's nothing bad on here. Please add these things to my whitelist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so you train it during a time when you know that your system is fresh and set up, and then you're able to look at a log of the things it has blocked or that it has permitted and tweak it over time. It's like an application firewall. And I would argue maybe that's where we're going to end up. We ended up there with data firewalls, and that may be the way that I know we ultimately lock our systems down. And it's built into Windows.
Love to get this for Macintosh. So am I correct? Because I say this on the radio show all the time, and I probably should run these things by you before I say them. But I have been saying on the radio show, look, to get malware, to get on your system, the bad guy has to have you run a program in some form or fashion. The malware may be a malformed PDF and you run Reader and it's got a bug, but ultimately the way you infect systems is by executing code. And if
correct,
if the bad guy can't get you to execute code, and then you're safe. And so the idea being, we only can execute these set programs. You should be safe. Now, if one of those programs is Reader and you get a malformed PDF and Reader's not up to date, well, you'll still get bit.
Correct. Or if you're lured to a phishing site and they tell a naive user, oh, we'd love to show you this video that you're interested in, but you have a vulnerable or obsolete version of the video player, click here to update it. Right. And so many people who are not podcast listeners.
It's easy to fall for that.
Yes.
But now AppLocker would stop you because the installer for this malware would be not allowed.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. The OS X does something a little similar, but of course, as always with Apple, it's Apple that gets to decide. You can say, I'm not going to run unsigned code on this machine. And Apple is the signatory. So if it's not signed code, it won't run.
Right. And of course, we did that with Windows with device drivers. Microsoft said we're going to up the ante on device drivers, so you've got to have device drivers signed. And that is a useful bar to put on applications. Also, say that we're not going to run applications that don't come from theirs is. I'm blanking on it. I have a license from Microsoft. All of my apps are signed. Authenticode is their executable technology. And so it's like, don't allow anything that's not Authenticode signed. The problem is it's not impossible for bad guys to get an Authenticode cert. And in fact, one thing we did see that happened from the Sony hack is that a malware was quickly signed with the Sony certificate, which was stolen from Sony.
Oh, lordy.
Yep.
So this says allow apps. This is in the security settings on OS 10, Yosemite or later. Allow apps downloaded from, in the most strict form, the App Store only. So Apple has approved Apple's whitelist in effect. Most people, and the default is Mac App Store or identified developers. That really means one with a certificate. That is an Apple generated certificate. And then this is the least secure. And by the way, not the default. The default setting is allow apps downloaded from anywhere. So current Mac machines, really, you can only run apps unless you've changed the settings from the App Store approved by Apple or where a developer has a certificate from Apple. I think that's pretty good. That's gatekeeper.
Well, yes. So what I would do, and I know our listeners, you want to go to that middle option. Switch it now.
Well, that's the default.
Take it off.
Yeah.
That's
the default. Yes.
That is the default.
That's the default. If you say anywhere, they give you this big warning.
Oh,
and furthermore, they say in 30 days, we're going to go back to the default.
Good. Apple really has learned a lot of lessons in the last couple of years. We've seen them really tightening things up that way, and that's fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like allowing Flash and then like disabling it again automatically.
I love it.
It's like, yes, that's exactly what we want.
You're going to have Flash, but only for a few days.
Yeah, so I was going to say, if you had that default setting and you did run an app that was not from a well-known developer, that just gives you a chance. Again, you're going to get a dialogue that's going to scare you, and then you can say, how much do I trust where I got this from?
You have to kind of override it. It'll say, I'm not going to open this because it's not from a certified developer. And then if you wish to open it, you need to right-click on this app and select open, and then we will open it for you. But you cannot just, you don't click a button that says okay. You have to kind of do something else. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Moving on. Question 6. Dave held Redondo Beach, California. He was floored. I was floored by your, nothing can be done response to the Sony hack. If it's true, as you say, that computer systems simply cannot be secured against attack, and that isn't exactly what we said, but, don't you realize that implies the end of electronic methods in business and a massive return to paper documents and locked file cabinets? What movie star will discuss her future roles and earnings via email? What corporations will store their contract negotiation proposals on servers or even use anything more complex than a typewriter to prepare them? By the way, that's one of the upshots of this Sony hack is Sony is, in fact, stymied. They are having a lot of difficulty making deals. They are no longer using email. They're only making phone calls. I mean, that is how Sony's responded to this, going back to the Stone Age.
Didn't we hear that Russia had switched to typewriters for the same reason? Yeah.
So, but I don't think you were saying it's impossible, just not practical.
No. The response is a little more nuanced than that. But yes, exactly. It was, in reality, could I actually claim, could I design a system that would meet Sony's requirements and be secure? No. You just can't.
Could you do better than Sony? Yes.
Yes. And I talked about a number of things that could be done. I've been like challenging myself in the week since I said that, kind of thinking, well, what would I do? And something like whitelisting apps so that only IT approved things will run on your machine.
I like that.
Yes. And then set up a virtual machine which does not have privileges on the network, but is like, uses a VLAN out to the internet, so that if somebody wants to do anything else, they can do it in this container without IT permission, but they can't access any resources within Sony. All they can do is get to the internet. So if they want to run QuickBooks or whatever, or run an unapproved browser or some network connected software, they can, but it won't run on their machine. It'll only run in the virtual machine. And the only thing the virtual machine can see is the internet. it cannot see the rest of their machine or anything else. So that's the kind of thing that once you implement it, people kind of grumble. It's like, well, they didn't have this in my old job. And it's like, well, no, we got security at this place. So, I mean, there are things you could do. Also, it really does seem like their network was just one mass of interconnectivity. And siloing networks, which is, some lack of convenience, but it does mean that one entry point doesn't get you to the entire corporate, crown jewels everywhere. So anyway, I did want to clarify in case anyone else felt that, and I did see some tweets to that effect. It was like, what, Gibson can't do it? It's like, it's not possible, because you have, first of all, a huge number of systems in which we are actually finding vulnerabilities constantly, and you've got the human factor. The human factor is why you have a company, of people, and they're going to do dumb things. There just isn't any way to prevent that. There is a way to lock them down, and something like whitelisting apps on their machine that is connected, and then giving them freedom in a virtual machine that is not part of the Sony network. That would be an interesting thing to explore.
Well, and we talked about App Locker. That's something you can do. There are things you can do.
Yep.
But I think that was kind of my point with the hack of the Sands Casino, where presumably they did everything anybody knew how to do. I can't imagine they weren't following best practices.
I'll bet that after that they're doing more.
Yes.
So
yes.
So
there's always more.
So doesn't that tell us that they weren't doing everything they could do? Because there's no question that they're doing more now. And if Sony ever does recover, we know there will be changes there.
Yeah. You hear it pouring rain here? I don't know if you
I
can
do.
hear it.
I was thinking, who left the faucet
somebody's
on?
Popping corn or something.
Wow.
Mark Jones, Midland, Michigan. He encountered some unsettling verification questions. Steve and Leo, love the show. We'll look forward to it every week. When trying to schedule a FedEx delivery, I was asked to create an account. I've seen this, and I can explain what's going on. But I was shocked when a verification page confronted me with multiple choice questions about past addresses, last digits of my driver's license, names of others at my address, type of car registered to me. I was then even more shocked when it said that I had the answers wrong. It then asked me a different set of equally curious questions. At first, I was shocked that FedEx could know any of these things. Next, I felt like I was providing data about myself that otherwise would be unknown. Others on the web have indicated FedEx is relying on credit reports. I decided I don't need a FedEx account. No question here, just an alert at another unsettling turn of events. Leo might be right. The privacy battle is lost. No, there's good news. This isn't as bad as it looks.
I love the idea of you encountering a security question, and it's like, what was the name of your your first childhood sweetheart? And you type in Julie.
Nope.
And it says, no. Have you forgot about Sarah?
That would be scary. This isn't quite that bad. He's right. It comes from credit bureau information. I don't even think FedEx ever sees this. I've seen this. I've been exposed to this many times.
So it's trying to, without knowing anything about you, trying to verify your identity as who you are claiming to be.
Right. So it's an interesting puzzle, right? You want to authenticate somebody, but you don't have any previous conversation with them.
Right.
So there's no password. There's no secret questions. It's like secret questions, but you don't. So the only thing you can do is you go to one of the three reporting credit bureaus, and they provide you with these questions based on information that's in your credit report. I don't know what FedEx is doing, but the ones I have used, I'm pretty sure the way it works, these guys aren't seeing it. The intermediary is not seeing it. This is directly coming from as an interaction with Experian or TransUnion.
Come to think of it, I've seen that. I've encountered that too.
You have.
And there've been like some strange addresses for me. It's like,
they'll give you so what they'll do is they'll give you 4 addresses, 3 of which are bogus, one of which, and it often's not the full address, but it's, did you ever live at Page Road? And they'll give you 4 addresses, and you pick the one that you did live there.
Right.
And that's direct from your credit report because, of course, all of that stuff is stored on your credit report.
Right. So they're matching up your real world identity with your cyber identity.
And they're not gathering new information at all. It's like secret questions, but you just haven't prearranged the answers.
Right.
So unless you can think of I guess one issue would be if the third party were intermediating. So if FedEx saw the questions, got the answers, and then, if it made the quiz based on downloading your credit report, well, but they have access to your credit report. Yeah. If you're applying for credit, or you have to give them access to your credit report in some cases. At which point they know all that anyway. If you've ever given any company your social security number, that's because they use it to access your credit report. Date of birth, name, date of birth, and social is enough to get your credit report. So I don't think it's an issue. But you have to be the judge, of course. I think it's just it's solving an interesting question. How do you authenticate somebody you've never met?
Yeah, how do you match their real world true identity with their cyber personality?
And the only way you could do that is with a third party that did know something.
Yep.
Mike Vore, Columbia, Maryland, wonders about Sony exfiltration. I love that name, that word, exfiltration. Yeah. I've been wondering, how could that much data be taken off-site without the NOC noticing that much traffic? The Network Operations Center. Even with fast fiber, it takes a lot of sustained bandwidth to move that much data. An extra megabyte or even gigabyte a day might not be noticed, but we're talking 12 terabytes. That's either high bandwidth or a long time. Sony, of course, is not telling anybody, the FBI is not telling anybody how any of this happened. What's your speculation about how this might have happened?
Many people ask this question, and I just when I encountered it, the first time I encountered it, I added it to the show today because I wanted to respond to it. I had the same thought myself when we learned how much data it was, but then I thought, we're talking Sony Pictures Entertainment. Can you imagine how much content, how much media, how much data they must have transacting over their internet? I mean, over their intranet to the internet. And, the fact is, 12 terabytes for a major corporation's network, that's in the noise. I mean, and we do know that some of the data was snapshotted on November 23rd, and maybe a week later. So we don't know how long they were there pulling other stuff. We do know, for example, that they use Sony's own servers to seed some of the torrents, which is so ironic. I just love that. So there, it's sort of like trickling out over time, and as people use it, the way torrents will. So anyway, I just think, if it was our network, our individual networks, we would notice if 12 terabytes was trying to leave. But boy, a major media corporation the size of Sony, who Lord knows how much bandwidth they must have, and I just think it actually could if spread out over time, it would just probably sneak right out. Wouldn't even know, they wouldn't see it as a blip compared to movies that they've got coming and going across their fiber connections.
I would bet that digital movies now are distributed over the internet as downloads. I would bet that some of that came from Sony's servers, among other things.
Yep.
I also think...
actually, we know because a bunch of movies were exfiltrated.
Well, but those weren't projection copies. Those were the screeners. Kind of low quality, in fact, DVD copies that leaked out. As far as I've not downloaded them, I'm told.
Hardly worth going to find.
Really? No kidding.
Besides Annie, I can live without, I think.
Yeah. I can wait till Christmas Day. Thank you very much.
That's right.
And then there's also the suspicion... I guess we'll never really know what really
I'm hoping that, because it would really be fun to get the technical readout.
I would have no problem revealing that kind of information. If we came by it illegally, I would absolutely reveal that information, because that is something very, very valuable. The public does have a right to know, how did Sony get hacked? What happened? Et cetera, et cetera. there is some suspicion. Sony got hacked and didn't want to talk about it in February. And there's I can't, maybe is even part of the treasure trove that's been leaked. There was a memo saying we're not going to alert the affected parties that we got hacked. And that was in February. So it wouldn't, and by the way, there is a little bit of a nexus because that hack had something to do with Brazil. And there was a significant number of Portuguese and Brazilian documents in the trove.
Yes. We talked about that last week. And I also heard you say on the Tech Guy over the weekend to somebody who had a virus, you correctly said, there's no way to get rid of it.
Right.
Once it's in there, you can never know.
That could have been the vector back in February. And who knows, maybe they've been leaking data, a terabyte a week since then.
I mean, there is this notion of a foothold. You get in and then you go quiet and you protect yourself and you scrounge around.
Really interesting. I wish we could know the truth of this. And that, I think, would be very useful for prophylaxis for future.
Yeah.
Stéphane Blay in Gatineau, Quebec, Canada wonders, what if Sony was a bank? Stephen Leo, longtime listener, big fan, yada, yada. As big as Sony's recent hack was, I can't help getting shivers when I imagine how devastating an attack like that would be if it were a bank instead of Sony. How disruptive would that be? For all we know, those things are happening too. In last week's podcast, 485, you mentioned how impossibly hard it would be to secure Sony's network. Would it not be just as hard to secure a bank from a determined attacker? Are banks really that much ahead of the game, or are we all in denial? I don't want to be unfair to banks, but I do have a vested interest since my bank has my money. And I expect it's the same for you. Thank you. Optional, yada, yada, extra. On a personal note, I want to thank you for the amazing education I'm getting from Security Now. I work as a security professional, and it's amazing how many times I look smart because of stuff I hear on your show. I'm also convinced I passed my CISSP exam because of you. Thank you both, and keep up the great work, Stefan.
So I think it is without question that banks are more secure in the same way that casinos are more secure. And we could almost look at Sony as an example of the other end of the spectrum. That is, but if nothing else, how many attacks has Sony suffered? How many password breaches? I mean, Sony has been a constant victim over, we talked about multiple Sony problems over the years, and for whatever reason, they seem to keep having them. So it is certainly the case that lax security makes you more likely to get attacked, and that a bank by its very nature is about security and privacy and secrecy. Sony, as sort of the generic business operating corporate side, they're not. They're about, Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and, and movies and, movies and, actors and, all that. I mean,
they're artists. They're artists. They're not security professionals.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes. Artists.
Although a couple of things. We know banks get hacked all the time and don't report it. They just absorb the loss. And we know that happens every day. It's not like the Sony hack, because the Sony hack, they got everything. Although, who would care if they released a bank vice president's email, really?
Yeah, what is being, the loss that they're absorbing, though, is more of, like
funds.
Vendors losing their credit cards, who then, turn to the bank and say, okay, we gotta have to replace all these cards.
Yeah. So I think that banks also lose money.
Yeah,
they lose money to hacks, and they just cover it and move on.
Well, and that's a good point. We also know that banking customers lose money. There's all kinds of wire fraud and money transfer fraud where somebody says, "Hey, all the money in my account is gone," and we've discussed who is responsible in that event, and I erroneously said that the user, the victim, was responsible, but it turned out that there was a difference between personal and corporate accounts in terms of what was insured and what wasn't.
And then Sheldon Adelson, who is probably as protected as most banks, got hacked, right?
Yeah.
Chase Bank was hacked. Info stolen for 83 million accounts. That was in October. Hackers attack. Cracked 10 financial firms in major assault. That was in October, including J.P. Morgan. Remember?
Yep.
I mean, this stuff happens.
Yeah, it
We're
is
just
happening
used
all
to
the time.
it. You know what? We're just used to it.
Yep.
It's not happening. It isn't. We're just used to it. In fact, I don't think, we didn't talk much about, that's where this, see, maybe okay, you know what, this backs what you're saying up, because J.P. Morgan got hacked badly for 83 million accounts, an untold amount of money, just a couple of months ago, and nobody talked about it that much. Sony gets hacked, and a few stars' salaries get revealed, and it's the talk of the town for weeks. So that does back up your argument that it's not a bad thing to reveal this, because it just does raise awareness.
I think it's human nature. It's got to be bad for anyone to say, oh, I really don't want that to happen to me.
And by the way, Chase didn't want to reveal that it had been hacked.
No, it hurts its reputation, and their reputation really matters.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I think that's it. I don't see a question 10.
Nope,
I think
we're
once
done.
again you've aced it. You are an A+ student in my book. I don't care what SSL Labs says. Thank you so much for the good work you do. And it's always an education listening to Security Now. We do it every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 2100 UTC. You do stop by and participate live. It's great. You can even come by the studio if you want. We always have somebody in this. People love you. There's always people watching, in the studio. Email tickets at twit.tv, and we'll make sure we have a seat for you. This is my studio. The little one is a little constrained. There are only really 3 good seats. We could say there's a few obstructed views.
Yours is one of the best.
I have a
seats,
good seat.
You got the best.
But there's
seat
a couple of obstructed views, so let us know ahead of time. You can also get on-demand versions of this show in several places. This is one show where Steve has a copy of it, which is unusual, but Steve likes to host 16 kilobit audio versions and handcrafted transcriptions at his site, grc.com. We have the larger audio files and video, too, at twit.tv/SN. And, of course, you can always subscribe on your favorite eye catcher, iTunes or Xbox or whatever it is you use to listen to podcasts. Don't forget to go to grc.com to get SpinRite, the world's best hard drive maintenance and recovery utility. There's lots of freebies there, too, and you can find out more about Squirrel. Next week, it's your talk from, what was that, a Vegas HackerCon or something? Or?
Yes, it was November 7th. It was DigiCert's Security Summit.
Okay.
And I gave a really nice presentation, if I do say so myself, of sort of soup to nuts, if I may, for Squirrel. And so that'll be the Christmas special content.
Next week, December 23rd. And then we will be back live on December 30th. We can wrap up the year in hacks.
Yep, we'll do. And I'm going to give a Squirrel demo during that podcast. It's running.
Yay! That's exciting.
Yep.
So next week, our holiday special.
Your mouth's going to hang open.
Can't
You're going
wait.
to say, wait a minute, that works? That's secure? I go, yep, that's all there is to it.
So exciting. That's really exciting. So that's December 30th. Make sure you tune in for that. Steve, I'm not going to see you till New Year's. I know you're coming up for New Year's Eve. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm going to come up a few days before and join you guys in
the Washed Out House,
the host party, and then be hanging around.
That'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
It will.
3 a.m. New Year's Eve, 3 a.m. to 3 a.m. New Year's Day, 24 hours of 2015. I'm going to stay up late. Steve did it last time with me. I bet he'll do it again.
signed up. I signed up for doing something in front of a green screen with you. I'm not sure what I got myself into, but some sort of I don't know.
I think we're acting out a Flintstones episode, and you're Bam Bam.
Oh, good.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. We're doing it for a charity, though, so you should really do anything. You should really step up, because this is all to raise money for UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, which does great work all over the world, including in the Ebola-ravaged areas of Africa. They've really been doing good stuff there. So we thought it'd be good to take. We were going to do it anyway. Why not do it for a good cause?
Yeah.
We're going to have auction items, giveaways. It's going to be fun.
Neat.
Thanks, Steve. Have a great Christmas. Won't see you till after the holidays.
Right. Have a great week, and I'll see you a week after next.
Take care.
Bye.
Security.